Hey everybody, Jason here. Welcome to my knot channel. So I've been waiting for a long time to do this specific video. Ever since I started this knot channel, this is one that I've been leading up to. As you might know, I like to spend a lot of time camping, hiking, canoe tripping, and so this video is about the knots that I use the most while out in the bush. So this video is going to show 6 different knots. In fact, it's going to show 8 different because I'm going to show a couple variations or alternative knots, but it's going to show 6 knots that I use the most. Okay, you might already know them, you might not, and if you don't, hopefully this has something to offer you, and if you do, then maybe it's a good review and you can leave a comment if you agree. All right, leave a comment if you don't agree. Anyway, these are the 6 knots that I use the most. Okay, so I'm going to show you 6 main knots, and truthfully we could probably skip over the first 2, but what I find is that the first 2 I use a lot when I'm making a compound knot, you know, something like a trucker's hitch or, you know, doing something else. So they're very basic, you likely already know them, but for the benefit of those who don't, or at least don't know the terminology, I will quickly show them. So the first one is the simple overhand knot. Now the overhand knot is the classic knot where you simply take your working end, wrap it around your line, and then pass it through the loop that you've created to create this knot here. The overhand knot is a knot that is a stopper knot, okay? And it's also, when tied around something, known as a half hitch. So if I go around a branch and do this, then it's a half hitch. But for the simplicity of this video, we will just call it an overhand knot, all right? So we just wrap around, pull, and it's a stopper knot. So what is a stopper knot? Just like the name describes, a stopper knot is used when we want to stop our line from running through something. So let's say I tie a rope and I think the rope might slip. I can add an overhand knot at the tail end so that if it does start to slide, it hits the other knot that's securing the load and will hopefully prevent it from passing all the way through the working knot. Okay, so the overhand knot is a stopper knot. So the next knot is a slip knot, or it's a slipped overhand knot. So I do the same thing, pass around my working line, and then this time I'm going to pass a bite through my overhand. And by doing that, I create this loop here, and now to undo it, I just pull that tail end and it will easily come undone. All right, so sometimes there's a benefit of creating a loop in a knot, a benefit to creating a loop in a rope that we don't want to bind. So as an example, if I took my rope and I did this with it doubled up and I pulled it and then use that, then this knot in here, this double overhand knot, is likely going to tighten up and become a real pain to untie later on, right? So instead of doing that for the loop, what I might do instead is do a slipped overhand, and now I have a loop here, and if I wanted to secure it further, then perhaps I could do a half hitch at this end just to stop it from sliding through, and then undo my half hitch and undo my loop, which is a slip. Now there's other times when I might use this particular slip knot, and one example would be in a trucker's hitch, which I will get to later. I actually prefer a different knot to this one, but it is an option. So the next knot is the figure 8 knot, and to tie that figure 8, what we're going to do is cross our line, pass our working end behind from the other side, and then up through our loop, and we can pull it. And the figure 8 in this case is another stopper knot. So just like the overhand, I have now a stopper that is a little bit more robust and will prevent the working line from sliding through another rope. Just like the overhand knot, I can use that figure 8. So I will tie that figure 8, and this time I will pass a bite through and cinch it tight. And now I have a slipped figure 8 knot, and I can just pull my tail end to undo it. And just like my slipped overhand knot, I have a loop which I can use to hook onto. Again, I would need to secure that tail end, and again I can do that just by doing a half hitch, or maybe even 2 half hitches to secure that from sliding, right? And I have this loop here that perhaps I would attach a carabiner, or something that is not a life load to hold on to, but this is a slipped figure 8, okay? So another knot that we need to know sometimes is how to tie a fixed loop at the end of a rope. So we've seen 2 different options for creating a loop, and maybe I would say it's not so secure. We have to tie those half hitches to make it a bit more secure. But the best, in my opinion, for a fixed loop is the Bowline Knot, okay? And so the benefit of a Bowline knot is that it creates a fixed loop, meaning that this loop is not going to move one way or the other. It's fixed in place. And so again, I could hang a carabiner, or I could tie this just on its own around, say, a handle to lift something, or maybe I want to tie the end of a rope to the deck of a canoe or a thwart, and then tie off to a tree, and I don't want that loop knot to come undone. Well, the Bowline is a good example. Okay, so the next knot is in a situation where my length of rope is too short, but I have another length of rope. So what I can do then is tie a bend, and a bend is a strange word for the category of knot that is tying 2 ropes together. I don't know why they use the word bend, but maybe it's because we bend our rope. I would say probably not, but anyhow, we have one, and then we have the other. We're going to pass the second through, wrap around, and then I'm going to pass it underneath like that, and I have a sheet bend, and this will securely fix 2 ropes together, and I now have a much longer length that I could use for whatever application I wanted. So the sheet bend is a sailing knot, and the purpose often is to join 2 boats together if one is pulling the other. So the knot is relatively secure when taut, but can be relatively easily untied when the load is taken off of it. So you can see again, when I pull this, it's tight now, right? And the knot will stay secure. I release the tension, and it can be relatively easily broken apart, and you have the 2 separate lines again. So there's another bend knot that I'm using more and more. It's becoming one of my favorites, and it's tied very similarly. So again, we just create a bend, a bite in our line, and I pass through my other line, working end, through that loop. I'm going to need a fair amount of working line here, and then what I do is I wrap around the standing line twice, and then come back down and pass through the loop again. And what I want to do, you've tied it right, is if you pass your tail end and it's going in the same direction as your standing line, right? And from there, I will cinch that up, and I have a knot that looks like this, okay? And the name of this knot is the Simple Simon Bend, and this is just one of the extra knots that I'm showing you as an alternative to the sheet bend. The Simple Simon can also be relatively easily untied Takes a little bit more effort than the sheep bend, and in fact for that reason I like it a little more than the sheep bend. I feel like it's less likely to fall apart. Let's say the line becomes slack overnight as the temperature drops and things get damp. The Simple Simon tends to stay taut longer. Okay, so another knot that is really useful is the Taut-Line Hitch. Now this is a hitch knot, and so it's used to secure a rope to an object. So it can be a tent peg, it can be a tree, any object, right? A ring, and you want to tie off your rope to that object. So the Taut-Line Hitch is a classic. I still use it, and I have another video called the Taut-Line versus the Midshipman's Hitch. Sometimes I tie a Midshipman's Hitch instead of a Taut-Line. They're both very similar. One is superior, and I highly recommend you check out that video to see the difference. If you learn the one, you can easily learn the other, and then brag to your friends that you know another way of tying a similar knot to the Taut-Line Hitch. So the Taut-Line Hitch, we're just going to, we're going to create a loop, and this time I'm going to pass on the inside, and I'm going to pass around twice. Alright, and it's going to be like that. Then I'm just going to come down to the other side of my loop, and I'm going to go through with another wrap. Basically it's a half hitch there, and you should have this crossover look to it, right? And then you cinch up your line. Now, tying a taut line in thick rope freehand, not on anything to maintain tension, is problematic, but if I can get some tension in here, I might be able to show you what it looks like when it's finished. And here we go. So a Taut-Line Hitch. Okay, and like I said, this is an adjustable loop knot. It's an adjustable hitch, and so I can pull and change the size of the loop. So this is beneficial if I'm running a line down from a tarp or tying off to a tent peg. I can create this loop around my tent peg and then cinch up the knot to adjust the tension. Alright, so this is an adjustable loop, but it is a hitch, the Taut-Line Hitch. So this is just a very quick demonstration of the trucker's hitch. Just to explain it, I have a completely separate, in detail video about how to tie the knots, with describing it and close-up of the trucker's hitch, that I'm going to link to. I understand that this is not very visible in the camera, but hopefully you can get the gist of the explanation in this video. So basically what you do is you tie off one end to an anchor point. So I've already run this piece of paracord and tied it off to another tree, and then I've got this line here, and I'm going to run it over and run it around this tree to create, in this case, a ridge line. Now I want this to be tight when I'm done, so I could, do something here, and try to make it as tight as possible, but the trucker's hitch is going to allow me to create a pulley within the line. And so to do that, what I'm going to do first is tie that figure 8 loop that I demonstrated before, right? So I'm going to create my figure 8 here, and I'm going to pass through my little loop here, a little bite, and so I have that slipped loop in a figure 8, right? And I've got it some distance from the tree. Now what I'm going to do is I'll pass my working end around the tree, and then I will come back and come to the loop, and I will pass it through the loop, and now I have this pulley that I can pull and create tension in the line. All right, and then from here all I need to do is come back, and I can pass a slipped overhand knot, right, or a slip knot, and then a half hitch to secure that, and I have a nice ridge line. And if I want, I can tighten it up if it loosens up later, simply by undoing. And what I mean by loosens later is the knot itself shouldn't loosen, but sometimes the cordage will stretch, especially if you're having it up for multiple days and you have, you know, rain or just dew in the morning. If you're hanging things off of it, the cordage could stretch a little and you start to get some sag. You can just come and undo it a little and then cinch it up, right? And then do your, you know, your slip knot or your half hitches here to secure it again. And so that's the trucker's hitch. Okay, so there you have it. The knots that I use most when I'm out camping, canoe tripping, and hiking. Basically, anytime I'm out spending time in the wilderness, those are the knots that I use. And I would probably go so far as to say, if you're new to camping, if you learn these basic knots, you probably don't need to know any others. Of course, there's a lot of knots that you can still learn, and learning knots is a lot of fun. So if you'd like to know more, subscribe to my channel, okay? If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and thanks for watching.